What's going on, guys? My name is Matt and I am back with a new PC build. This time the price point is $700, and for that price you're getting a very capable 1080p and 1440p gaming PC that's actually also great for streaming gameplay to sites like Twitch. This is going to be a full build guide, meaning I'm not only going to be showing you each of the parts, but I'm also going to be showing you how to put everything together step by step, along with how to install Windows/drivers, and finally I'm going to show you how this PC performs in both gaming and streaming. I was very careful with the part selection, making sure to pick components that are high quality, reliable, and will last you for years to come. This system is also very easy to put together, making it great for first-time PC builders. Now, before I get any further, I want to take a minute to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Opera Desktop. Opera is a pretty awesome browser that's actually the first browser to go live with integrated generative AI tools. Opera's toolbar gives you access to both ChatGPT and ChatSonic ready to go at any moment to aid in your online browsing experience. Opera is completely free, and getting it set up and imported with all your bookmarks and browser data takes seconds. Once in, you can go to this tab in the top right corner to easily customize things to your exact liking, for example with the wallpaper gallery. One of my favorite things to enable is this force dark theme on pages option that basically forces dark mode on all the web pages you visit. Opera also features an ad blocker, tracker blocker, and VPN built in, no add-ons or plugins required. I've been using Opera for over a week now and have really been enjoying all of the built-in features, customization options, and especially the built-in AI integrations. You can get Opera by heading the link in the description, and downloading it is a 100% free way to both support the channel and try out an awesome new browser. Thanks again to Opera for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to your regularly scheduled content. So like I was saying before, this is a $700 gaming PC that's great for modern 1080p and 1440p gaming along with streaming. I'm going to be showing you how to put it together and set it up, but first want to tell you about each of the parts going into this $700 gaming beast. So the first thing I usually like to pick for a build when parting it out is the CPU, as this, other than the GPU, has the biggest impact on gaming performance and determines a number of other factors with the build. After looking at all the options, the CPU I went with that fits this build the best is the Intel Core i5-12400F. At $160, you're getting an incredible amount of value and performance. This i5 is rocking 6 cores and 12 threads running on the Intel 7 lithography. Clock speeds are really good with the ability for it to turbo all the way up to 4.4 GHz. This CPU is great for gaming and streaming, but also offers enough performance for a lot of workstation applications like video editing. The one minor downside is the lack of integrated graphics, but because this is a gaming PC with a dedicated graphics card, this shouldn't be a problem. One other nice thing about this CPU is it comes with a pretty decent stock cooler in the box. This is Intel's updated stock cooler featuring a sleek design and a copper slug for increased performance. It can get a little noisy, but it cools our i5 really well, and it comes free in the box, so we're able to save money here to use in other parts of the build. For the motherboard, I went with what I consider the best price to performance 12th gen Intel board out right now. This is the Gigabyte B660M DS3H-AX. At $100, the features it's offering are incredible. It has 4 DIMM slots, multiple M.2 slots, and good PCIe expansion. The VRM setup is actually decent, and the back panel I/O is pretty good too, with 2.5 gigabit LAN, a USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C port, and built-in Wi-Fi. This board also looks really nice in my opinion, with a neutral black and gray color scheme that fits the build very well. Moving on to RAM, I went for an all-black 16GB kit of Team Group T-Force Vulcan Z memory. This is a dual-stick kit of DDR4 running at 3200 MHz CL16, so speeds and timings are good for a budget build like this one. At $36, this kit is offering a lot of value. 16GB is plenty for modern gaming and streaming, but you could always opt for the 32GB version of this kit for only about $25 more. With that being said, we will have 2 DIMM slots free on the board, making upgrading in the future as easy as popping in another 2-stick kit. For storage, I ended up going for a budget NVMe SSD in the form of this Crucial P3. At $32 for 500GB of NVMe flash storage, you're going to have enough room for your OS, applications, and a modest sized games library. This drive comes in the ultra compact M.2 form factor, so installation takes seconds, and with another open M.2 slot on the board, it means upgrading in the future to more NVMe storage is very simple. This is a Gen 3 drive with decent performance, and for a system like this, it works out great. For about $20 more, you could opt for the 1TB version, but I think for most people, going with 500GB to start should be enough. Now let's talk about the graphics card. Thankfully, in this budget, we're able to get one of the best price to performance cards out right now, which is the AMD RX 6650 XT. At around $260, this card is an absolute beast, being able to handily beat the more expensive Nvidia RTX 3060. It is 8GB of video memory and a very solid 1080p and 1440p gaming performance. The version I have here is the ASRock Challenger D variant, featuring a nice dual fan design and a huge heatsink that ensures our card will be running cool and quiet. It has 4 video outputs and overall is amazing in combination with our i5-12400F. To power the system, I went with the Thermaltake Smart BM2 550. This is a 550 watt 80 plus bronze rated unit featuring a semi-modular design and all black sleeve cables. It's a very solid mid-tier power supply perfect for a budget rig like this one, coming in at only $55. This build is estimated to use around 380 watts at most, so a 550 watt power supply is more than enough. Power supplies are pretty expensive right now, so thankfully I was able to fit in a decent unit while still staying within the budget. Finally, let's talk about the case. What I went with is one of my favorite budget cases of all time in the form of this DIY PC Shadow H3 ARGB. At a little over $60, this case is offering a ton of features. There are 3 included ARGB fans that are connected to a controller in the case, so you can easily cycle through a ton of different lighting profiles. There's a tempered glass side panel, power supply basement, full mesh front panel, and a host of other niceties like magnetic dust filters. This case is also pretty easy to build in and overall acts as a great housing for this gaming PC. All in all, for $700, these parts make up one of the best price to performance gaming PCs available right now. All the parts are high quality, reliable, and should give you a great gaming experience for years to come. So now that you've seen each of the parts and understand why I picked them, it's now time to show you how to put everything together step by step. This PC is very easy to assemble and I'll be guiding you through the whole process. Before you get started, I would recommend finding a big open area to work on and block out an afternoon to get your PC assembled and set up. The only tools you really need are a standard Phillips head screwdriver, a smaller one for the M.2 screw, and something to tighten down standoffs like a nut driver or a pair of pliers. Static shouldn't be an issue, but if you're worried, you can use one of these anti-static bracelets or ground yourself periodically on something like a light switch screw. With your tools in hand, schedule open, and workspace clear, it's now time to start building your PC. The first thing to get out is your motherboard box, open it up and pull out the board itself, then under the cardboard you can grab out the I/O shield, and this is also where the Wi-Fi antenna is, which you may need if you're using Wi-Fi to connect to your PC. Take the board out of the bag, you can put the bag in the box, close it up, and set the board on top. Now go ahead and get out your CPU and bring your attention to the center of the board. Press down and out on this metal retention arm, it'll swing up, and just make sure it's hinged all the way back like this. Now hinge up the cover like this and bring your CPU to the socket. To align it, match up the cutouts on the CPU with the bump outs in the socket, which you can see on the screen now. You'll also know it's lined up right if the blank part of the CPU IHS is towards the cover hinge. Once lined up, go ahead and lower it into place, applying no pressure, it should just slot in. Once in, you can hinge and press down on this part. The cover will pop away. While holding that down lightly, you can swing the retention arm back down, securing it under the hook. With that done, we can now move on to the cooler. Your CPU cooler should be new, so it'll have thermal paste pre-applied. I've used this one before, so I applied a pea-sized amount of thermal paste to the CPU, but again, if your CPU cooler is new, you won't need to do this step. Now take your cooler with the fan cable facing the top of the board and lining up the pegs on it with the holes in the motherboard. Lower it down, and once in place with the pegs resting in the holes, you can press them down one at a time in a cross pattern. Make sure they're all secure, and when you're done, you should be able to handle the board by the cooler like this. Now grab the CPU fan cable and locate the CPU fan header at the top of the board near the RAM slots. Line up the notch on the cable with the bump out on the header and just press it into place like this. With that done, you can now try and tuck away the cable to neat things up a bit like this. Your CPU and cooler now successfully have been installed, and we can move on to the SSD. Bring your attention to the top SSD slot right below the cooler and loosen the screw right here. Now you can remove this heatsink, also making sure to remove the plastic off the bottom of it like this. Now take your SSD, lining up the notch in it with the notch in the slot, and insert it at an angle like this. Now you can reinsert the heatsink over the SSD like this, hinge them both down, then simply resecure the screw we loosened earlier. With that done, bring your attention to the memory slots and grab out your RAM. We'll be installing our sticks in slots 2 and 4, which are the gray ones. Start by opening the clips on both of these slots like this. Take your first stick, lining the notch in it with the notch in the slot, then lower it into place. Once lowered in, press down on each side until the stick clicks into place and the clip snaps shut. Now you can just repeat that same process for your second stick of RAM into the other open slot. With that done, you can now push your motherboard to the side and get out your case box. When getting it out, it's a lot easier to pull the box away from the case instead of trying to pull the case out of the box. Once your case is fully out, start by removing the 2 thumb screws on the back panel like this. Now pull back and lift this panel away. You can now pull out the manual and untie this twist tie. Pull out the screw bag that looks like this and contains all the screws necessary for building your PC. Now set the case onto its side with the glass facing up and unscrew the 4 thumb screws holding the panel into place. You can now lift this panel away, and for me personally, I like to put the foam along with the side panels into the case box while I'm building, as this gets them out of the way and ensures they're safe from accidentally getting kicked or knocked over while you're building your PC. Before we install the motherboard, there are a few things to do. The first is configure the standoffs. Grab out 4 standoffs from the screw bag that look like this. We're going to be installing them into these 4 holes pictured on screen now. I like to hand start them, then come back with pliers or ideally a nut driver to tighten them down. QC on this case isn't great, so one wouldn't fit, which isn't the end of the world, but if you can get all 4 in, then do it. Next, optionally, you can remove these 2 standoffs at the bottom of the case towards the power supply basement, as we won't be using them. Now, as a preemptive measure, you should remove the second PCIe slot cover here by bending it back and forth until it snaps off and can be lifted away. Next, take the I/O shield that you removed from the motherboard box earlier, orient it like this, and lower it down to the I/O cutout. Press each corner into place until it's secure. When done, it should look like this at the back. We can finally now grab the motherboard, handling it by the cooler, and lower it in at an angle like this, lining up the I/O with the I/O shield and hinging it down. Again, the I/O should line up with the I/O shield, and you should be able to see the standoffs beneath the motherboard holes. Next, take 8, or in my case 7 motherboard screws that look like this, and install one into each of the motherboard holes with a standoff beneath it. Order doesn't matter, just make sure they're all snug and secure. With that done, you can lift the case back onto its feet and get out your power supply. We'll need to install 2 of the extra cables that come in this black bag. Start by getting the cable labeled PCIe and plug the blank 8-pin end into the power supply right here. Now take one of the SATA power cables that look like this, take the 6-pin end of it and plug it into the power supply right here. Now you can take your power supply with the fan facing down and insert it into the back of the case like this, lining up the holes in it with the holes in the case. Next, get out 4 power supply screws that look like this and install one into each of the holes. You may need to hold the power supply in place for the first few to make sure everything is lined up correctly. Once those are in and the power supply is secure, we can now start routing cables. Take the 8-pin CPU cable that looks like this and push it through the hole in the top right here. Next, take the big 24-pin power cable that looks like this and the blue USB 3 cable that looks like this and push them both through this hole here. Now take the HD audio and USB block connectors that look like this and push them through this hole here that comes in the main part of the case right here. Finally, take the PCIe power cable and the little front panel connectors that look like this and push them both through this hole here that enters into the main part of the case right here. Now take the SATA power cable and bring it to the fan controller. Make sure the connector and header are oriented the same and plug it into place. With that done, we can set the case onto its side and plug the rest of the cables in. At the top left of the board, locate the 8-pin CPU header and grab the 8-pin power cable. Line the clip in the cable and the connector up and then just press it into place. On the right side of the board, find the 24-pin header and grab your 24-pin cable, making sure the 2 pieces are pressed together. Line up the clip on the cable with the bump out on the header and press it into place. Below that, grab the USB 3 cable and line the bump out on it with the notch in the connector, then press it into place. With that done, bring your attention to the bottom left of the board, finding the HD audio header and grabbing the HD audio cable. Take the block connector with the HD audio text facing down and press it into place. To the right of that, take the USB block connector and plug it into one of the two USB 2 headers with the text facing up like this. Now at the bottom right of the board, find the F panel header and these tiny front panel connectors. Start by grabbing the power LED connectors and plugging them into the top left 2 pins with the positive to the left. Next, take the hard drive LED connector and plug that in directly below the power LED connector, again with the positive to the left. Finally, take the power button connector and press it into these 2 pins right here. Orientation doesn't matter. With that done, there's just one more component to install, which is the graphics card. Start by unscrewing this top PCIe cover screw right here, then unscrew, lift up, then resecure this sliding panel. You can now lift away the top PCIe cover. Next, open up the PCIe slot lock by pressing down on it like this. Now bring your card to the slot, lining up the notch in it with the notch in the slot and lower it into place. Once lined up and lowered down, press down on it to secure it, making sure the PCIe lock snaps shut. Now you can slide that cover back down like this and install 1 or 2 of the same type of screws used for the power supply. Now for the final cable, take the PCIe power cable, making sure the 2 pieces are pressed together, line up the clip and bump out on it, and then press it into place. Now put the PC onto its feet, because the final thing to do before putting the panels back on is cable manage the system. I started by pulling all the excess cable link to the back of the case, then made sure everything looked good in the main chamber. Then I tucked the excess cables under the power supply basement and flipped the PC onto its side to make reinstalling the panel and the 2 thumb screws a little easier. Then just flip the PC over and place the glass on upside down. Remove the bottom plastic, flip it over, and remove the top plastic. Then reinstall the 4 thumb screws, which I hand started, then finished with a screwdriver to prevent smudges on the glass panel. With that complete, your system has been assembled and you're ready to turn it on for the first time, but there are still a number of things to do before you can start gaming and streaming on your PC. The first thing to do is install an operating system. Today, I'm going to quickly show you how to install Windows 10, which is still my preferred OS, and it allows you to upgrade to Windows 11 whenever you want. The whole process is pretty quick and easy, and I'll show you how to do that now. To do this, you'll need a USB drive that has at least 8 GB of capacity and another computer to download and create the bootable Windows USB. Head to the Windows 10 download link in the description and select Download Now in the Create Windows 10 Installation Media section. Once downloaded, open it up and press Yes here to bring up the installer. Accept this agreement, then once on this screen, select the Create Installation Media option and press Next. Now make sure you have your preferred language selected along with Windows 10 and 64-bit and press Next. Now make sure USB flash drive is selected and hit Next. You can now select your flash drive from the drive list, and as a warning, this will erase the contents of the flash drive, so make sure those files are backed up if you need them. Once your drive is selected, hit Next. It'll now download and set up the Windows 10 installation files onto the flash drive, which will take a couple minutes. Once you've landed on this screen, you can hit Finish. The installer window will close and you can now eject your flash drive and bring it to your new PC. With the PC powered off, plug it into one of the back USB ports, then turn on your PC. Once powered on, it'll boot to this screen right here. Select your language, time, and keyboard preferences and hit Next. Now just press the Install Now button. Now you'll be brought to the Activate Windows screen where you can input a Windows key, which you can get for pretty cheap online, or you can press this I don't have a product key option in the bottom, which just means you'll have a little Activate Windows watermark on your screen and some less customization options, but everything else will be the same. I press the I don't have a product key option and hit Next. You can now select your version. I recommend going with Windows 10 Pro and then hit Next. Accept the license and hit Next. Now select the custom install option and it will bring you to this screen. Make sure your SSD is selected and then hit Next. Now it'll go through and install Windows onto your new system. Just let it do its thing. The system will eventually restart and bring you this screen. From here you can just go through the prompts, logging into your Microsoft account and setting all your passwords and preferences. Once through this section, you will be dumped directly into Windows 10. So Windows is successfully installed, but there are 2 more simple things to do before you can start gaming. First is to install drivers. For the graphics drivers, head to the link in the description, and once there, in this menu select Graphics, AMD Radeon RX 6000 series, 6600 series, then 6650 XT, and hit submit. Under the Windows 10 dropdown, select to download the AMD software Adrenaline Edition. Once downloaded, open it up, select yes on this pop-up, then this window will appear and press install. Let it do its thing, and in a minute or so you'll see this screen. Let it run, and once completed, you can select the restart option to restart your computer, which also fully completes the installation. Once restarted, this is now the time you can install motherboard drivers. I didn't install any because Windows is pretty good at finding and installing them automatically, but I will leave the link to where to download and install those if you're interested in the description. With all your drivers installed, if everything is looking good, you can now power down your PC. Now press your computer's power button and immediately start smashing the delete key until you enter into the BIOS. Make sure the XMP profile option is enabled right here, then press F10 to save and exit the BIOS. With that done, you are now ready to start downloading and enjoying some games. Speaking of games, it's now time to talk about the gaming benchmarks and then the streaming benchmarks. For gaming, I tested a variety of games ranging from easy to run esports titles to a few different AAA games, some of which I also tested at 1440p for those interested in running the system with a 1440p monitor. So without further ado, let's get into the gaming benchmarks. So as you can see, 1080p and even 1440p gaming is totally doable on this machine, even in a game like Cyberpunk at 1440p with the high preset. Temps and noise were pretty good as well, with only the GPU running a little hot in some instances, but nowhere near dangerous or throttling temps. In terms of streaming, I tested the system streaming both Valorant and Cyberpunk to Twitch at 1080p 60fps. This resulted in a very smooth and enjoyable experience on both my end and the stream end. There was a minor hit to performance while streaming, but I was still averaging hundreds of FPS in Valorant and well over 60fps in Cyberpunk, which goes to show you that this PC should be great for streaming pretty much any game you want to sites like Twitch. Overall, gaming and streaming performance are surprisingly good, especially when you take into account the $700 price tag of this PC. In the end, for $700, the system is probably the best price to performance budget gaming PC you can put together right now in 2023, but I'm interested to hear what you guys think of this build in the comments below. So yeah guys, I think this wraps this video up. These build guides are a lot of work, but if you keep watching them, I'll keep making them. If you liked the video, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. Oh, and as always, this is Matt from Tech by Matt, signing out.